Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker. Part of what we're going to explore in today's episode is this whole idea that being intentional about your time doesn't mean you have to squeeze more tasks into every available moment. It doesn't always have to be about cramming in more, but rather about creating space for what genuinely makes us feel good and lights us up and enriches our lives. And that is something I am all about. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to remind you about my new program, a really exciting, simple new way you can work with me and move the needle quickly. It's called 5 Days to Less Stress, More Satisfaction, and it's a self-paced journey designed to help you quiet the mental noise, reclaim your energy so you can focus and create space for and be clear on what truly lights you up. If you're ready to feel more grounded and joyful as we approach spring season, this might be the perfect step for you. Think of it as a petite opportunity to push the restart button. You can claim this for yourself today through the link in the show notes. Just click 5 Days to Less Stress, More Satisfaction, and you could get started as soon as today. All right, so for today's episode, I'm super excited to welcome Lisa Zawrotny to the show. Lisa is the founder of Positively Productive Systems. She's host of the Positively Living podcast and also a productivity coach. I knew I wanted to have Lisa on the show for a conversation because we speak the same language around productivity. Lisa is all about trading out this hustle mentality for a shame-free, sustainable approach to productivity. A lot of what she does is focused on helping clients escape the feeling of overwhelm and design personal systems so that they can stretch into their goals without sacrificing their well-being. More specifically, we're going to talk about to-do lists today because most people have a to-do list, but it can either be a draining source of frustration or a tool that gives you a sense of safety and spaciousness and ease in your day-to-day. If you love this conversation as much as I did, please do us a favor, share it with a friend who might enjoy it. That is the best way for us to expand and reach more women with these amazing conversations and resources. Let's get into the show. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Whitney. I am so delighted to be here.
I know we are quite aligned on approaching this conversation around productivity. And it's not from this do more, always achieve more patriarchal vibe, but more from this space of creating more space and ease to show up for what counts, right? I think that's where your Positively Productive name comes in. It's a little bit of a spin, but can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy and maybe how it contrasts with some of the more typical air quoting productivity models that we see out there?
I would love to. And I think part of that is also a little bit about the story of where I came from as a mom and at one point a caregiver for my mom while I had my two babies. And the overwhelm and the survival mode that I was in was a huge life lesson to what really matters. And I mean, this is like in such a small nutshell to explain what happened, but it changed me as a person. And I thought, why am I pushing and forcing and trying to do all these things because society keeps telling me I have to, right? It tells us as women, it tells us as mothers, it tells us in so many ways what we're supposed to be doing in order to, let's get the air quotes out already, to be productive, to achieve, to be successful. And I stepped back and I took a deep breath and I was like, I couldn't because I was so overwhelmed. And then I thought, well, do I have to? And that underlying question carried me through. It carried me through to helping others declutter their lives, physically. And as a professional organizer, it helped me to understand that it's really about the mental load and the clutter that we even have emotionally. And all of these things, how deeply interconnected they are, and that we don't talk about them and that we don't do it compassionately enough. And so we still want to achieve, we still want to get stuff done, we still want to make things happen, right? We still want to create. I'm a multi-passionate creative and I love to do that. So we want to do those things, but how do we juxtapose that with a healthy relationship to it? And then keeping us healthy in the process. I was coming back from a really dark time and I didn't want to go back there again, which you can in the traditional sense of productivity, because those roads of forcing and doing too much and not listening to your body and to your mind and to your heart, those are roads to burnout. And that was going to take me right back where I wanted to go. I'm like, there's a better way. And yeah, positively productive comes from positive psychology and the idea of look toward the good. Look toward what you can do. And that's where I stand today. That's what I try to teach. And we do overlap in so many beautiful places. The idea of your soul's calling, listening to your body and understanding the impact stress has on you, and that it's about managing it and optimizing it. Those are all the things that I'm about. And that's different from what I call hustle culture. And I don't mean we don't work hard. I just mean that we work in a way that's best for us.
Yes, let's lean into all of that for sure. I'm glad you brought up your background as a professional organizer, because I think when some people think about decluttering, especially, we're on the cusp of spring, I think people get into that headspace in an extra way. A lot of people think that decluttering has to do with just this external environment. And while I know we both think that it's important to have awareness and approach that, you've talked about how in your work in that space, you realize how interconnected that exterior environment was, and that maybe women also needed a little support decluttering with this mental load in other areas. Can you help me understand a little bit of what made you have this awareness?
I think it actually was when I was walking into spaces to declutter, right? In the traditional residential professional organizer mode of we're going to declutter, we're going to get the kitchen all set, we're going to get that closet, conquered once and for all. And of course, the classic situation of we get it organized and then a week later, or a month later, or a year later, it's back to where it was, or maybe worse, or whatever. All of these frustrations. And I thought, as we were digging into the spaces, all the questions that I was asking, I realized were head and heart. It kept going back to that. And so, in my tendency toward wanting to be more productive, more efficient, I thought, well, if we get there first, maybe we can make things. And what I found ultimately is that we do make things easier. We create the filters for decision making. Everything becomes easier once we get clear on that. But it goes back and forth, and I think we need to talk about all of it. And the way that I describe it is that our mental space and our physical space affect and reflect each other.
I love that. So today I want to talk a little bit about decluttering outside of that physical space, just because there's some really niche topics that I love your knowledge about that we haven't talked about at all on the show. I think we both agree that being intentional with our valuable resources of time and energy is so important. And I've never talked about to-do lists on the Electric Ideas podcast. But I feel like most people have a to-do list, whether it's because they feel this like sense that they're going to forget everything or they're a taskmaster type. We come at it from so many different perspectives. And so I just want to go deep into this topic. So let's begin with the to-do list and where you see women in general not setting themselves up for success in their approach to to-do lists. Again, caveat, we all know everyone has different, brain types and approaches, but just in general.
Yeah, and I love this topic because I do see a benefit for that. As a productivity coach, I like to talk about the traditional productivity approaches. I don't mean the overall mantra, the hustle culture idea of the pushing, but the technical things, right? The
Mm,
time blocking and different techniques, a Pomodoro method, all of those things have their place as long as they're matched properly. But yeah, let's get into the to-do list idea. And of course, checking things off your list. Raise your hand if you've ever done something and then been like, it wasn't on my to-do list. So you add it so you can check it off. And that's very satisfying, right? And I'm all for that. I'm pro doing that. So please do. But here's what I see is that we make lists and that concept is great, but we're off on the technique a little bit in terms of how they're meant to serve us and adding things to them that are actually going to sabotage us. And what I mean by that is let's back up a little bit. And this is actually getting into a mental decluttering technique that goes along with this. When we make a to do list, sometimes we're doing this intentionally, and sometimes it just happens because we're trying to think of all the things that we need to do. We do something that David Allen calls a mind sweep. Sometimes people call it a brain dump, whatever you want to call it, that is mental decluttering. And that's a beautiful thing. It's kind of like opening up the closet and pulling everything out, which you need to do in order to properly organize. But we get off base when we do this mind sweep, and then we call that our to do list. Like we sit down and we write all the things down that we have to do. Okay, there's my to do list. That is going to trip you up so hard because number one, there's probably way too many things on there every single time. You feeling me? Because
yeah.
I
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I know for me
That,
there is, right?
yeah, that can just feel kind of like puke on the page. And it's just like, okay, that might have felt cathartic in the moment, but you're going to look down and be like, holy crap, like, okay, and may probably run away.
Exactly. I know I will. What is on Netflix? What's new on Netflix? Help me out here. Yeah, you will run away. So it's like the idea is each step that you take that you want to be intentional and focused and efficient, what is it going to do for your actual productivity when you take the action? So yes, do the mind sweep. Yes, get it out of your brain. David Allen says that the mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And I love
Mm.
that. So, right now in that process, let's just talk quickly about the impact of the clutter. If you're trying to hold on to the ideas, you're not fully present, right? You're like, oh, I have to do this one thing. And so you may be doing another thing, but you're always thinking about what you have to do. So, yes, take everything out of your brain and put it there. But I want you to think of this. It's called capturing as far as his technique is concerned. But take that, what you've captured, and consider it not your to do list but your to choose list.
Love that. Okay. That feels much more empowering already. Tell us more.
Exactly. So think about that capturing as a pool of the potential things that you need to do that are now, sometimes people will call it a parking lot if it's maybe a long term thing. There's a lot of different terms people use, but that capture, that pool of potential things to choose from, to process. You want to think of it as a place to capture and process, not your to do list. Now you can do that again the next day because you'll think of more things, or someone else will request something. I mean, stuff is always moving, right? So it's not a one and done. So once you have that capture space, and that can be old school notebook that you keep adding to, it could be notes on your phone, it could be a Google Doc, whatever makes you happy as long as you can access it quickly and you can process what's in there. And then you take those items and you create an intentional to do list for the situation at hand. And what I mean by that is it can be for the day. I love theme days. That's another little thing that I do each week. And so Wednesday is a big coaching day, Thursday's a big podcasting day. So I will have a to do list based on that. So captured, then a list dedicated. So these are the things that I'm going to be working on. You process those. Sometimes you will see something on that capture list that it's like, there's a birthday coming up and I have to be thinking about that. That's different. That's going to be like, okay, that's a project and I need to set myself a reminder to do some research, maybe make a list of who's coming, what I'm doing, think about the different tasks. Sometimes it's breaking out tasks. You can see how when we do this like brain dump from our minds to the paper, that's way too much. Like you said, it's going to make you run away because it's like, yeah, it's ideas just like tossed up and you have to kind of make sense of it. It's like when you take a junk drawer and you empty it, you have to pull things apart and okay, figure out where things go and what didn't belong. Same idea with what comes out of your brain. And sometimes something has to sit there until you're ready to figure out it goes on the calendar, or maybe I set myself a reminder 6 months from now to revisit it, or maybe it goes in task management software to deal with it at another time.
Okay, this is getting nitty gritty and I'm here for it. I mean, my question, not what you're saying, but I just want to reflect that back. So we do the mind sweep and we've got,
Mhm.
whew, that felt good, but we're not running away. It seems like then we go through a curating process in my
Yeah.
mind. So during that process, because I hope women like really walk away and try this tomorrow.
Yes.
Seriously, during that process, clarify once more the filters you're thinking about when you look through all of those tasks. Do you have separate lists for work and family? Does that work for some people and not for others? Like, how do you categorize and curate that list in just a little bit more detailed fashion?
Yeah, that's a great question, Whitney. And I appreciate you asking it because there are actually a couple of other pieces to this that I want to make sure that we understand. So, if we're talking about the steps, then we do have the mind sweep. We put it all down there, and that happens multiple times. But there's actually four categories I want you to think of first before we do subcategories like where does this apply to my life? And those categories, I call them the 4 Ds, and you've probably heard 3 Ds. This is not new in that it's been discussed before, but it's different in that I have a very specific order for them. And so we have delete, delegate, delay, and then do. Those are the four. And the reason delete is first, just like when you go to organize a space, think about your closet, for example, you declutter first. You remove things that are old or broken or no longer fit or no longer useful or so last year or whatever you're feeling in that moment where that like no longer belongs, because
Yeah.
sometimes you will have something in your brain that you're like, I have to do. And then when you stop and you give yourself that space, I know you talk about this so much and I so appreciate it, that space for reflection, to step back, to look at it with fresh eyes and a fresh heart. You're like, wait a minute. Why is that on my list? Why have I been using up mental space on this thing? There are going to be things that don't fit, that just don't belong. And so you don't want to organize what you don't intend to keep. And that
Mm,
includes on your to-do list. And that even means something that was on your to-do list that's not getting done, by the way. You're allowed to delete it. You're allowed to be like, I'm letting that go because it's getting in my way. It's making me feel guilty. It's reminding me about what I haven't done. Because our brains, that's all they want to do is close the task loops. And if we've already closed a task loop, we're not thinking about all the things we've achieved. We're thinking about what we have yet to do. That is
mm.
our natural inclination. So we want to release that and get back that battery power, right? So
Yes.
release the brain fog, right?
Yeah. I just want to reflect that back to you real quickly and then we can continue to go
Yeah.
through. But for me, in my list, for example, I think it's okay to give ourselves permission to release something, even if it's good.
Yes. Oh gosh, I love that you said that. Yeah, because now is not the time for it. And interestingly, that may be releasing it because now is not the time. And it may mean releasing it for good, or it may mean releasing it for now, which is actually the delay part. So we'll get to that. And you can say delay or delegate. I think either of them, I feel like delegate is a good one for the next step because so many times, and I think we as women and caregivers, especially, we are so dedicated to doing the thing and making things happen. And we're so good at it, right? That we forget to look at a thing and ask the question. Here's the question for you: ask, how can it get done? Not how can I do it? As an English major, we always taught, don't make it passive. I'm like, this time we're making it passive because we want our mind to question the, ooh, okay, how can this get off the list? How can it get done? not necessarily how do I have to do it. Then you start to innovate and create. Like, oh, I have a friend who could do that. I have someone who loves doing that, and I can't stand doing that. Also, lest we forget, we have so much automation now that can step
Mm,
in, right? We can delegate in a way where we automate.
how can it get done? Yes, I'm with you. It's not an active question. To me, it's a receiving question, though. Like, how
Yeah.
can I invite help in? Because so many women, especially like you were talking about when you're in that caregiving phase and you're coming up for air, and it's just like you're almost like looking for the next fire to put out just because that is a season.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women fall into that trap of just being like, it's so much easier for me to just like keep going and keep doing stuff myself, and realizing that they're creating a pattern of not creating space for themselves and not accepting or being open to even family members to some ease. Like, how can this get done?
Yeah, and that's a beautiful reframe to say that it's a receiving kind of reframe. So it's not only it takes it off your list, because the quickest way to get something off your to-do list is to get rid of it. And it's
Right.
either deleting or delegating. And so with that, it also gives people, other people in your life, people who love you, an opportunity to serve you. And again, that's another conversation for another day, right? But yes, asking how can it get done makes you open to the possibilities of finishing something without necessarily needing it to come from you.
Yes.
And
Okay. So
so,
delete,
yeah.
delegate. Okay.
Yeah, delay is the next. And so that kind of touches upon this idea. If something was a delete that's a not now, this is semantics, but delay could mean it really is a not now. I have to let go of this because I have this much capacity, that much ideas and creativity. And this is where, and I was feeling you in your description of this. It's not always a bad thing. It could be like, I have all the ideas and I want to do the next thing and the next thing. And ooh, we could do this. And that's wonderful. But also you've said this in your podcast before, where we need to be realistic, and that's known. It's not sexy, but it is imperative. It's imperative for our own sanity. It's imperative to do the best we can with what we have. I'm a big fan of Greg McKeown's essentialism,
Hmm.
less but better, right?
Hmm.
So how do we do less? Well, sometimes that's the parking lot idea. It's taking something and saying, that's a not now. Doesn't mean you're giving it up, Lisa. It's okay. Don't panic. But how about in 6 months? You
Yeah.
reminder on your calendar, a little notification that says, hey, review this again. And either you review it and you're like, it's totally awesome. Yes, let's do this thing. Or you go, what was I thinking? Well, I was being creative. And so, all ideas at least energize you, if nothing else. And maybe we get rid of it now. Maybe, yeah, maybe that was
Yeah.
seemed like a good idea at the time. Or maybe it's I still love this, but it's still a not now.
I love that because there's a safety in that for me of the
Yeah.
delay,
Hmm.
because I can picture there's some things that it's almost like, oh, if I don't get to this and I've been dreaming about this, am I not showing up for myself? But I know right now is not the time where I have capacity. So it kind of feels like killing a small dream sometimes to take something like that off your list. So it just seems like much more self compassionate to, set that reminder and then delete it. Cause then we have that essentialism feeling, like you said, like, okay, you've gotten really clear and this is what you've chosen as your assignment in this season. And it just, I love this. I love that. It's just a very clear process. Okay. So
And it's
delete.
intentional, right? And
Yes.
how it feels so much better to say, I am choosing to set this to the side. So it's not in my line of vision. It's not in, all of these concepts, they do go back to professional organizing and this idea of, prime real estate, or sometimes in professional organizing, we'll refer to it as a maybe box. It's like, I can't decide. And if you can't
Mm,
decide something, if you can't decide to let something go, it's always a keep. And I really mean that. And I mean that from, you talk about compassion. I deal a lot with people who have, sentimental struggles that they're grieving, they're dealing with trauma. And so this feeling of I have to get rid of it, let's not do that to ourselves. There's so many reasons to keep what no one else might understand, and it's not for them to understand. It's only for you to understand.
mm,
And that includes dreams of, oh, I want to start this new business or have these ideas. But if you need to be realistic in the moment, then you're allowed and encouraged to say, it's a not now. I'll review it later. But you're right that it opens up your prime real estate, your current, time, your current space so that you can focus on what does need your attention right now.
Yes. And I think it's just this huge permission slip for women to focus on less. And I think so many women approach their to-do lists as this strangling, scary enemy with frantic, almost reactive, like, oh God, what can I? And I really think that your system helps us turn it on its head and just get clarity and be super intentional with what we are taking on and what we're not taking on in the season. Even talking about it that way makes me feel a little bit more peaceful. So thank you for sharing that approach.
Well, that
Uh,
delights me. So the fourth D is do.
yeah.
Now, if you think about it, you have all these things that have come out of your brain, maybe on your to do list that have been like lingering there, languishing, if you will, forever. New stuff that's coming down. You've just done this mind sweep. You've done multiple mind sweep. You have all these things. You start to process it this way. And now think about how much you have removed to get to the do part. That's where now you need to get stuff done. Those things are what we want to start categorizing and looking at in terms of where do they belong in our lives? Is it, you do want to have subcategories of, is this business? Is this family? Where does this belong? You want to look at deadlines. There are some things that are going to be very obvious. I need to find the folder for the cats because we have a vet appointment. That is a very direct, thing. But working on my updated trailer for my podcast, there's a little more flexibility with that. And when might I work on that and how do I prioritize that? Now is when we take the remaining, if you will, the do right on this list, and we figure out where does it belong based on deadline? Where does it belong based on prioritizing? The family needs this first, then I can work on this work project. Where does this next project belong in terms of the order in which I'm doing things? And that's going to depend upon how you structure your week, how you structure your days. It's going to depend upon the demands, getting doctor's records. I've been doing that a lot lately. So there's a few projects that I have for the podcast and for the business that are like, okay, that's like a couple weeks from now because these are the first things I need to do. And yeah, you choose that based on your values, your current life phase. I love that you've mentioned that a number of times. And that permission that we need to give ourselves to say, we can't always be on, we can't always be going. And our priorities are going to shift depending upon what's happening in seasons of our life.
Absolutely. I want to ask one more, again, like deep, specific question about these to-do lists, because I just think that this is going to be really helpful. How specific should we get with adding like recurring daily or weekly tasks to our list? I'll give you an example. Like if somebody is in the regular routine of working out or doing yoga or getting groceries and meal planning, that sort of stuff, where do you draw the line on what makes it on your to-do list or what just kind of becomes part of your habit and rhythm?
Well, I love this question, and I have a few answers that are immediately coming to mind. If we're working together and you're my client, what we would be doing is actually asking more questions about how it is that you work best. So, the couple points, one that you made earlier and one now. So, one that you made earlier was our minds are all different, right? And I do work with a lot of neurodivergent. I live in a sea of ADHD in my household. And so I have a lot of people who are also rather rebellious when it comes to time blocking. So I do something called flex blocking. But to your point, when you say something can become a habit, there may be a way that something that is on your calendar consistently then becomes the thing you do every day or every other day or every week. And that's become a habit. And can we celebrate that for a moment? Because it's amazing. But in a way, it still is on your calendar. It may just not be there as a color blocked item, but you're still doing it. I think some of it is the trial and error of, do you need that reminder and that boundary? Are you a people pleaser to the point where if you don't have that thing on your calendar to kind of connect to yourself and to others, that is an appointment? By the way, it can be an appointment with you. Nobody needs to know what that appointment is. you don't need to justify availability or not, but justifying it to yourself in being in practice of setting those boundaries, of setting those reminders, of giving yourself the mental freedom. If you feel like you're constantly asking yourself, what am I doing next? That's probably a sign that you need to be putting it on the calendar and getting more specific. But also for some, it's having that list of, I know what I need to do tomorrow and I have that list there. So I don't need it on my calendar because the calendar is I sit down at my desk at this time after I've dropped off the kids and gotten my coffee and done my workout and done those things. And then I look at my list and now I know what I need to do. It's subtle. And I know sometimes because we work so differently that my answer can feel like a non-answer, but I guess my answer is ask yourself the questions of, do I need that reminder? Do I need that boundary protection? Then put it on my calendar. And if I don't, or I feel like I need more freedom, then the calendar item is maybe a theme day or a theme morning. Sometimes my clients like that, where it's like, well, this morning will be administrative related stuff, but I get to choose. So
Right.
play with it.
Yeah. Yes. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's almost like if it's kind of ingrained and you don't need to look at your list to be like, oh yeah, I'm working out. Like if you just have these rhythms and routines, like for me, I don't need to put meditation on my list because I'm doing it. It's just part of who I am. So no, that actually makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you can help women understand maybe if they can reflect on if they're using their list sometime to actually be productive in this positive way that you coach on, or to kind of prove their busyness and their worth and what they might want to look out for.
Yeah, this is a good question because we need to keep asking ourselves this question. Am I busy or am I productive? And sometimes people will say, "Oh, you sound so busy." And I'll balk at that word. And I was like, "You mean active? I'm in an active time right now." So I think we need to be clear that we can be active and a lot can be going on. There can be a lot of moving pieces in our lives. But is the needle moving forward? Do we feel satisfied? Do we lay our head down on the pillow at night and say, all right, good game, like, or do we go, I don't even know what I'm exhausted, but I don't even know what I did. Again, it kind of comes back to asking yourself these questions of, how do I feel about what I'm getting done? And also, what's the conversation when you are having a chat with friends or coworkers or, really anyone who you might be engaged with regarding what you're doing? Do you feel like you're having to prove yourself? Are you using what you're doing as an excuse to not do other things? That's a little interesting tidbit that I came across with decluttering, is that I found that clutter can sometimes be a protective mechanism. If you don't
Yeah.
want to deal with your grief and your trauma, if you don't want to deal with having people over, oh no, I'm so busy, as opposed to dealing with the reality of the situation that you need your alone time or you need a break or, again, it kind of goes back to boundaries and things like that. It's sort of asking yourself the question of, how much do I have on my list? Am I trying to prove my worth by what I'm doing? Or is this simply what I need to be chipping away at? And I'm offering compassion and celebration, right? And like, it's okay to have a list and you don't get everything done. Hello, life every day. But as long as you're saying, hey, but look at me. Nice try. It was you put forth a great effort today and I'm so proud of you. Like if you can say that to yourself, then we're good. But if you're trying to prove yourself, link your worth to your productivity, have conversations with others, then that's where even the same things on the same list can be detrimental to you versus, a positive, normal part of what you're trying to achieve every day. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Yes. And this is the perfect place to wind down because you just innately talk about it in a way that feels a bit softer and self compassionate. And I think even women having that awareness of the energy they have when they look at their to do list and whether it's like tense shoulders, like, what am I going to tackle? I think that even that is going to get women thinking a little bit about,
Mhm.
are they approaching it from this, like, how do I get to move toward the life I want to live energy, or this punishing energy is just so different. So That's really coming through as you're talking. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. It really it does my heart good to be able to express it this way and to encourage those intentional, purposeful, and again celebratory kind of choices because, the fewer things the better, the more you're going to chip away, the more you will succeed and without the suffering. I think
Yeah.
that's the key, right?
Yeah. Ah, life's a lot better. The world's hard enough on us, ladies, right? We can be a little gentle with ourselves. I always end with an opportunity for reflection. So, I guess in this area of mental decluttering and approaching our to dos with a little bit more intention and compassion, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
So you have to understand that as a multi-passionate creative, what's your favorite or what's one thing? And I'm always like, I have so many. But really, I think when it comes down to it, it's how do I feel about what I'm doing? And that's like a big question. But it's like if you're saying, I feel good about what I'm doing because I'm getting some stuff done here and I'm serving my family and I'm getting to do these creative pursuits. And it's never a balance per se, but it's a harmony. That's a good sign. But ask yourself that question. How do I feel about what I'm doing? Because if it's busy and stressed and I'm on the edge of burnout and I'm frustrated and whatever, it will tell you, those answers will tell you what you need to do next. And I'm here to support you.
Thank you, Lisa. This was such a wonderful conversation. I know my community is going to want to connect with you and follow your enlightening work. So, where can we find you?
Thank you so much for asking. Positivelyproductive.com is the hub where you can find all the different details, social media and coaching and whatnot. You're listening to an incredible podcast here. So if you wanted to hop over and join me on mine, Positively Living, I'd be delighted. And if you want to simply have some fun and see how ridiculous I can get because laughter is stress management, then please do join me on Instagram at positively_Lisa and we'll have some good laughs.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. So wonderful to connect.
Thank you, Whitney.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.